que chacun a pu obtenir le...
Well, I hope each one of you has received the document. May we start now? Madam, you have the floor.
Honorable Chairperson, the Honorable President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Speakers and Presiding Officers, Honorable Members, Clerks and Secretaries General of African Parliaments, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to present the summary of yesterday's deliberations in the form of a communique as follows. The annual Conference of Speakers of African Parliaments convened by the Pan-African Parliament from the 4th to 5th August 2016 in Midrand, Johannesburg, Republic of South Africa, adopted this as the final communique. Pursuant to Article 18 of the Protocol to the Treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament, PAP Protocol, which enables the PAP to work in close cooperation with regional and national parliaments inter alia by convening annual consultative fora with the parliaments of the regional economic communities and nations and other deliberative organs to discuss issues of common interest. Noting the overall theme of the 2016 Speakers Conference, from adoption to ratification of the African Union treaties, in particular the new protocol of the Pan-African Parliament, what are the advantages for Africa? Considering the debates and presentations made on the benefits and the effects of the signature and ratification of protocol to the Constitutive Act of the African Union relating to the Pan-African Parliament by African member states and the plan of action to achieve legislative powers. Recognizing the challenges facing regional and national parliaments in their efforts to contribute to a speedy ratification, domestication, and implementation of AU treaties, particularly the Malabo Protocol to the Constitutive Act of the African Union relating to the Pan-African Parliament. Reaffirming commitment to the effective implementation of the resolutions from the 2015 Annual Conference of Speakers of Parliaments in Africa and stress the importance of the role of parliaments in the process of ratification of AU treaties, particularly the Malabo Protocol. Taking into consideration the value and enriching contributions of the speakers of regional and national parliaments on their roles and actions for the ratification of the amended protocol of the Pan-African Parliament, as well as the recommendations from the meeting of Secretaries Generals and Clerks of Parliament held on the 3rd of August 2016. The conference resolves that the speakers of regional and national parliaments urge their respective governments to ratify the Malabo Protocol and deposit instruments of ratification with the African Union Commission, AUC, in order to get the required 28 ratifications from member states for the amended protocol to come into force. Call upon national parliaments to adopt a proactive approach through parliamentary structures such as committees and questions during plenary to engage with their governments for the ratification of Malabo Protocol. Urge the African Union to ensure that within the African Union framework, functions are segregated between legislative, executive, and judiciary as reinforced within the context of the Agenda 2063. strengthen regional parliaments as a way of enhancing regional integration towards the attainment of a continental parliament with full legislative powers, strengthen the oversight role and responsibility of PAP committees, especially on budgetary oversight, through adequate sitting time, build capacities of legislators of PAP to develop model laws to stimulate change and motivate national and regional legislations, and also strengthening of the PAP administration to effectively facilitate the work of the PAP, particularly through provision of research services to inform development of model laws. Call for the establishment of parliamentary committees on the ratification and accelerate accession to AU treaties. Recommend to PAP to identify influential personalities in all African regions to be appointed to champion the cause of accelerating the ratification of AU treaties, in particular the Malabo Protocol. Ensure a consultative process that includes civil society and all stakeholders in the ratification of the revised protocol of the PAP at national level in order to enlist popular support to the work of the Pan-African Parliament. Support the effective implementation at the national level of the resolutions adopted at the annual meetings of the clerks and secretaries general and speakers of parliaments in Africa. Join the African Union in calling on the United Nations to set a date for the holding of the referendum in Western Sahara to allow the people of Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa, to decide on their right to self-determination. And lastly, to express commitment to the implementation of the resolutions of this 8th Conference of Speakers and report back at the next conference, adopted in Midrand on August 5th, 2016.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam President of the National Assembly of Lesotho. And dear colleagues, we're going to move on to possible amendments of the text. Those who have amendments may present them to the Secretariat before the effective adoption of this communiqué.
Thank you very much, Chair of the meeting. I have a few areas that I want improved. Now, if you look at page 2, the paragraph which starts taking into consideration, I don't know whether the word is values or valuable, because I thought the contributions were valuable. So I want clarification on that. And then regional should be with a capital R. Then I wanted that before we resolve, we acknowledge progress in the two countries where the protocol has been ratified and deposited. So I wanted to add that, noting that to date, only 2 of the member states have ratified and deposited the protocol. Before we go into the resolution, then on page 3, yesterday we received lamentations from the President of the Pan-African Parliament that he is unable to convene a plenary session for longer than 2 weeks, and the committee sit for a very short time. So really what was talked about was improvement in funding. So I wanted to include a clause after paragraph 3, consider a review of the funding of the Pan-African Parliament by the national governments. Then number 7, to call for the establishment or realignment of parliamentary committees, because establishment of additional committees has a financial implication. So I want us to give a choice, those who can establish new committees to do so, but those who can realign existing committees also should be able to do so. So I want to say call for the establishment or realignment of parliamentary committees for the ratification and accelerate accession to AU treaties. Then between number 8 and 9, we are talking about working with civil society, but I think that there's a bigger constituency of the population. So especially now that we have something to sell, we have something to market in form of the passport. One of the biggest headaches of the African people is the issue of the visas and movement, and you can't go here and you can't go there. So I think now that we have something to market, I want to include a provision that the member states and the members of the Pan-African Parliament popularize the African Union to the population, because it's really too far from our people. So those are the amendments that I'm proposing. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the presentation of those amendments. You can give those amendments to the Secretariat, please. We're going to see how many amendments will be presented, so that we can have a debate page after page. We can see whether there are any objections to the amendments. But because we received amendments for the various pages on even up to, if there are no objections to these amendments, for example, some of them are merely regarding the form, values, for example, without an S in English. But if there aren't any objections, can we consider them as adopted and accepted, and then we will go through as. Is there any objection to the amendments that have been presented? Yes, you have the floor. Mr. Baba.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I not in agreement that we make amendments and then submit to Secretariat as conference adopting those amendments, which become part of the final communique. So if there are no substantial amendments, I suggest we go page by page and let's hear what their proposed amendments are, and then adopt accordingly. But to adopt on the basis that the Secretariat will do the correct thing, I don't think it is fair.
Il n'était pas question.
No, we didn't say that we were going to adopt them before they are given to the Secretariat. According to the procedure adopted by the Secretariat, it was rather a question of the Secretariat getting all the amendments together, and then we will ask, asking the person concerned to give them to us, but it's perhaps more methodical to go page by page. I think that would be a better method. If there are no objection, we can then go page by page. No objection? So we'll proceed like that. We will start by the second page in the English version, and page 2 also in the French version. So there's no page, there's no objection to the cover page. I have the French version here, and then Madam President will follow as far as the English version is concerned. So, page 2. Yes, it's not a correction, but when we will have the final document, obviously it's not going to be a draft final communique, it will be the final communique. I'll say that because sometimes the Secretariat can leave it as a draft communique, but it would be the final communique on the cover page. Yes, of course, that will go ahead, no problem. The Secretariat should just be aware of that. Then the second page in the French version and in the English, so both of them are in on the second page. Are there any amendments? Yes. Zambia, you have the floor.
On the second page, after the word reaffirming, I would propose the inclusion of the word there, reaffirming the commitment.
Les textes ont été distribués.
Yes, the texts were distributed. Now, the English version only has 2 pages, apparently, whereas the French one consists of 7 pages. So I think we have to work paragraph by paragraph very quickly, but I think that's the best. It'll be easier. So we start from the first paragraph, the annual conference, until the words final communique. So that's the very first at the top of page 2 in the English version. Zambia, we'll come back to you. If you can put your microphone off. So the very first paragraph, those are 4 lines.
The amendment is on paragraph 6, I think.
Nous arriverons paragraphe.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that because we're going to go paragraph by paragraph. So no amendment on that first paragraph. The second one, which starts pursuant to Article 18, and it ends with the words common interest.
Oui.
Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First paragraph, last but one line after RSA. There should be a comma there. And then adopted this communique. We need to add this communique.
This is the final communique.
Merci.
What?
Objection par rapport.
Thank you. Any objection to that proposal for the English version? No?
La parole.
You have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't understand that. In Midrand, Johannesburg, Republic of South Africa, he has asked for the insertion of a comma. I think that is okay, but adopted this as the final communique. I don't think anything is wrong with that. If you say adopted this